gentlemen, welcome to Nobody Is Shiftier, because in fact, nobody is shiftier than the Shifty Hippo. So, guys, we got a little bit of basketball, not as much as usual this week because the NBA has decided to absolutely do nothing. Like, it has been a dead zone out there. And I guess that's going to be no pun intended because we do start the show today with probably the most pertinent news that the NBA has to offer. NBA legend Bill Russell passes away at 88 years old. Now, Bill Russell, you could say what you want about him as a player. I myself personally probably have him lower on every ranking than damn near every opinion giver or analyst that there is. Well, maybe not analyst, but opinion giver in the history of NBA media. But you can't take one thing away from Bill Russell, which was that he is the greatest winner, not only in NBA history, but I would make the argument sports history. Bill Russell played 13 seasons in the NBA. He went to 12 finals, won 11 of those 12. Any of you that want to come out here and tell me that your 6 for 6 is better, fine. There's just no changing the 6 for 6 guy's mind. Beginning, middle, end, you can't do it. You can't tell him any layout of any argument that his 6 for 6 isn't as great as anybody else. Fine. Go ahead. 11 championships in 13 years. How awesome is that? Now, yeah, you can go ahead and say what you want about the league at the time, about the talent at the time, about how many teams there were at the time. You could do all that. Bill Russell is one of the greatest legends in NBA history. The finals, the MVP for most valuable player of the NBA finals, Bill Russell goes and hands it out every year. The NBA is going to have to find a new guy to hand that out. I don't even know what they're going to do from here. Is it going to be Kareem? I mean, I feel like it needs to be somebody that won a whole lot. Kareem played the same position. He was still, I mean, he played against Bill at points early on in his career. Maybe. I don't I don't know what's going to happen there. But Bill Russell was a staple in the NBA. We knew we were going to see him every year at the NBA Finals, and Bill Russell has done all sorts of work off the court as well. And keep in mind, one thing about Bill Russell that's incredibly interesting beyond just what player he was the first black NBA coach in the history of the NBA. First one. He was also, if I'm not mistaken, the first player coach in the NBA. Red Auerbach, I assume retired. I don't 100% know the reasons for his leaving, but I'm going to assume retirement because I can't imagine that you would leave that team for another team. And Bill Russell stepped in and played coach and center. Bill Russell's a guy that I think would relatively translate to today's NBA. He wasn't incredibly a point savvy player. He averaged about 18 a game, averaged a ton of rebounds. Sure, he could still do that. He was a leader, and he also was incredibly athletic, especially for that era. There were not a lot of guys his size that could move the way that he could move. Bill Russell, make no mistake about it, one of the fastest centers of all time. Really disappointing to see him go. You know, I think back to, obviously I never got to watch him play during his live performance. I've watched tons of tape on him. I understand the player that he was. Ultimately, very likely is the blocks leader in NBA history, but they didn't record the stats of blocks back then, so it will not ever be Bill Russell. I believe Mark Eaton is the current block leader in NBA history. But Bill Russell, there's been people that have done the math out, and it's significantly more. Bill Russell had the rim. You didn't get by him. If you were going to beat the Celtics, it had to be from jump shooting. That's why the only teams that could ever give them any type of competition was the Lakers back then. Jerry West, Gail Goodrich, and Elgin Baylor, they could shoot. And then when Elgin Baylor was on his last legs, they brought in Wilt, who basically was a He was Bill Russell, just better at scoring, not as good at defense. But they were very comparable as players. So with Bill Russell passing, I thought of my best actual memory of Bill Russell, which was after I don't remember which NBA finals. It was one of the two, the LeBron one with the Heat. They had asked Bill, how much do you think you would score per game in today's NBA? He said 10 points. So really, you think that's all you'd be able to get? He goes, well, I'm 75, damn it. That made me laugh because he wasn't comparing it to him bringing his 20-year-old self to today's NBA. He was doing a thing where he said right now, if he laced him up and got out there, he said he'd be putting up 10 a night. I thought that was really cool. It made me laugh, and we're gonna miss Bill. He was an absolute staple. Like you knew the NBA finals were around when you saw Bill Russell roaming the premises. That's how you knew. So rest in peace to Bill Russell. We're all gonna miss you. And here on Nobody Is Shiftier, no better way to celebrate than having an ice cold beer. Moving on to other NBA subject matter. KD, please go somewhere. Don't care where. Just go. Kyrie, please just go somewhere. Don't care where. Just go. Donovan Mitchell, I mean, if you stay in Utah, that's fine. But if we could just make that decision soon, like, hey, what are we doing here? I could really utilize that. Because, like, I'm about to win another NBA title on my 2K19 game. And I don't want to start up a new season if then right after I start up that new season, everybody gets moved. Now I'm in a scenario where, well, now this season's not as fun anymore because I got KD and Kyrie playing in Brooklyn. Brooklyn right now is a fun matchup for me. Well, if one of them's in Miami and one of them's in LA, well, I'd rather them be in Miami and LA. So now I know, what I got there. It's kind of bullshit. Like they're being selfish. They're taking this away from me. That's where the problem lies. So please, everybody that's going to move, just move now. Like I don't want to get into the season and then we're worried about it. And granted, yeah, I know last week I told you I'm going to get 2K22 and I still am, but I want the moves now. I'm being selfish. I'm being a selfish fan. Give me what I want. Everybody, go to your destination. Be there now. I want to start making predictions and shit. I can't do that when I don't know where all the players are going to be, especially when it's KD, Kyrie, and Donovan Mitchell. Like, we're talking about 3 of the top 25 guys in the NBA. Go somewhere. All right. Yeah, nobody gives a shit about baseball, so we're going to move along to the NFL. We're going to talk a little bit of Miami Dolphins. Whew. You guys seen any of this training camp footage? I don't think Tua is going to throw an incompletion all season. I think he's going to end this year 100% completion percentage. I might even throw 80 or 90 touchdowns. Dude, the Dolphins have not put out one negative piece of PR since that underthrow, like when Tyreek first got traded to Miami. I mean, yeah, will he occasionally be underthrown? He was sometimes from Mahomes. Like, I'm sure that it will happen. What this team looks like, I honestly don't know yet. This is probably the most interesting team going into the season for me, which is really cool. For the Dolphins franchise that has not been truly relevant since the early 2000s when they had Ricky Williams, especially when they also had Ronnie Brown there, and the two of them, and the Wildcat was going, and you had Chad Pennington in there. That was probably the last season that you actually looked at Miami as a real threat. That was, what, 2004? 2005, maybe? Like that was a long time ago at this point. This is really cool for what is a large market organization to be able to have now relevance. And do we know if it's going to work? No, we don't. And that's part of what makes this team incredibly interesting. But what a kick in the balls they just took, right? Forgot my ringtone's on. I'll talk about my phone in a minute because that's a whole nother thing. So, what a kick in the balls for the Dolphins. They were in talks of getting Tom Brady, Coach Sean Payton to Miami. Instead, you end up with Tua, you end up with Mike McDaniel, and then you just lost 2 draft picks, a 2023 first round pick and a 2024 third round pick. I mean, Stephen Ross being suspended, who gives a shit, honestly? Like, it really doesn't matter. For the most part, it's just not a big deal. But when it comes to where they could have been going into the season versus where they are in this season, that's crazy. That's absolutely nuts. So, you hope that it works because in theory, this might be the best thing that's happened for the Dolphins. Maybe Tua is great. Maybe Mike McDaniel is a phenomenal coach. I mean, all signs point towards it, especially with the PR we've seen from Dolphins training camp. Oh my God. But again, let me reiterate Brady and Sean Payton, Tua, Mike McDaniel. I feel like that's why we're seeing the majority of this massive PR shift where everybody's just throwing out anything positive about the Dolphins that they can. Because honestly, it had been relatively well swept under the rug to some extent. Like, I wasn't seeing this whole Brady Payton story out there anywhere. I didn't hear ESPN or FS1 talking about this. This was something that everybody just said, yeah, wow, huh, man, that could have happened. It was gonna happen. If it wasn't for a Brian Flores lawsuit, which, by the way, what the hell is happening with that? What, he got hired by the Steelers and now it's all over? Like, got hired as a linebackers coach. He's not even a coordinator. I feel like that case should still be out there. But real point of it being, the Dolphins have put out so much positive PR and going into the season, I have no idea what it's actually going to look like. They're clearly the fastest weapon team in the NFL between Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Raheem Mostert. That's like 3 of the fastest players in the NBA, the NFL. That's 3 of the fastest players. Like, if you give me a top 5 list, I think those 3 are all potentially on it. I don't know if Waddle's quite at that level, but also I'm saying that somewhat ignorant to Jalen Waddle's game. I know he's fast as hell, though. So Miami has the ability, and considering Tua's accuracy, because he really, I know I was doing a thing with the 100% completion percentage. Obviously, he's not even going to be close to that. But he does throw a very accurate football, especially from short range. And if you're sending one of those guys deep, and then you got one of them crossing the field, you're likely going to be able to find him in stride 7 yards downfield, and they'll be able to turn it into 23 on a regular basis. I think the Dolphins have a real shot at being a fun team. I don't know that they're necessarily good. I think they'll be good. I don't know that they're playoff good. Because keep in mind the AFC. We're talking about an AFC West with 4 teams that I don't see how they don't all get into the playoffs. I really don't. I understand, like, there's got to be 3 teams from other divisions there. But when I look at who the secondary teams are, I mean, we know the Bills are going. I personally think the Ravens are going to be there. Tennessee's probably going to be there. And then you're looking at what? Indianapolis, Cleveland, maybe, Cincinnati, and Miami. And then the rest of the AFC West. I mean, you can go ahead and make your arguments as much as you want. I'm taking the AFC West teams. I personally, and you guys are going to find this out here in a couple of weeks when I go through what every team's record, what my predictions are going to be. I'm not as high on Cincinnati this year as most people are. I hear a lot of people telling me Cincinnati is a lock to be right back in the mix. Okay. I'll tell you why not, but you got to wait a couple weeks on that one. So we're going to move over to Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray. Well, there was something I said last week that I want to reiterate rebring to the point. Does this really solve everything? Oh, it seems like it does not. So Kyler Murray, it has been leaked that his contract did have the detail in it, the stipulation that he would have to essentially make sure that he was doing film study. I don't remember the exact terms, but I want to say it was 4 hours a day. Not 100% sure. So the Cardinals and Kyler Murray came to this agreement. And then all of a sudden that comes out to the public knowledge, and Arizona immediately takes it back. Kyler Murray's pissed it was ever there. So you're either saying that Kyler Murray and his agent didn't take the time to read through it before they signed it. That's pretty unlikely to me. Or this could have been kept in house like every other contract stipulation that's ever been out there. Like the only thing we usually get is incentives. That's generally the only piece that's leaked. What are the incentives? Not the stipulations, not the things that are mandatory for you to do to get this money. What are the things that you have to do to get all the money? That's what we usually get. Oh, that wasn't really talked about pretty much any time ever. But this time it was. So do we think that it was Kyler Murray's camp leaking this because Kyler Murray so much doesn't want to have to sit down and study film, or feels like his organization doesn't believe enough in him and it offended him, so he wants it out there so that they would just simply remove it from his clause? Or did Arizona put this out there to show, hey, we're telling him he needs to watch film. We're now putting it in writing. You need to watch film. I don't know what the answer to this is, because I could see where both sides thought they were going to win on this, but it turned out that Arizona as an organization took a huge L, because anytime that you're going to go ahead and put a contract clause in, you're going to send it out there, you're going to have it signed, you're going to put it out to the public, and then as soon as it hits the public, you panic, go, oh no, this has bad perception, let's take it away. What's that show? Shows weakness from the leadership, from the management, the organization itself. If you have this clause and it gets leaked, well, it's already out there. Stand on it. Talk with your chest. Like, what are you doing? Just take it off? No, that doesn't fix it. All that does is say, hey, we had this in there and then he didn't like it and people freaked out and we panicked and took it away. That shows weakness. Like that's a terrible move. And with the Cardinals this year, and I mentioned this somewhat last week, but the NFC is a lot more open than it typically is. We know the Rams and Bucks are good. We don't know who's next. And I think Arizona was probably, I think they have the highest ceiling of every other team in the NFC. I think they have a higher ceiling than the Rams, frankly. And the Cardinals are now going to just get caught up in this petty Kyler versus the organization thing. Well, what does that do? Like, what did you gain from this? Um, Nothing. Nothing. Nobody gained anything. All that's out there is Kyler Murray doesn't watch film. He didn't like that you said he didn't watch film, and now he doesn't have to watch film. Nobody wins from that. Kyler doesn't get better because of that. The organization doesn't hold him to a standard because of that. The organization itself doesn't get better from that. And the organization also shows to other players, hey, if you don't like something in our contract, just threaten them, you make it public, and we might just take it away. That's crazy. It's crazy. Like, I can't imagine sitting down at work and being like, hey, guys, you know what? I know it says that, I can't do drugs here, but man, I love meth. So, you know, better take that off or I might report it to the news. Like, what? They're just going to say no. Bye. Thank you. Like, it doesn't work like that. You don't get to just say, hey, I don't care about what you want me to do. Here's what I'm gonna do. Accept it or don't. And in football, you do get some of that, at least to the extent of, hey, pay me or I am requesting to be traded to another organization. Okay. That's at least understandable. You don't like what this atmosphere is providing for you? Okay. Feel free to look elsewhere. We'll see what we can do to work out a deal. But just to the stipulations of the contract, like they're asking you to do what's a kind of essential job for a quarterback. And I know that people have pulled it out on record that Kyler has said in the past that he really doesn't have to watch a lot of film, that he just has a great feel for the game. And so it really kind of does pair with this to somewhat let you know, yes, Kyler Murray really does not like the study of film. Well, guess what? To be a top tier quarterback in the NFL, which Kyler looks like he's on his way to being, but currently is not, you have to be into film. Like Tom Brady, Tom Brady loves film. Tom Brady brings film with him when he goes on vacation. Him and Giselle are sitting on a beach and he's just got a tablet pulled up with film. It's crazy, but it also clearly benefits him. He knows the ins and outs of every defense in the NFL. He's the most prepared quarterback going into week one any given season of anybody. Because not only did he watch what the team did last year, but he also took the time to watch the film from what players that team has acquired. So now he knows, okay, well, when I play San Diego this year, well, oof, I can watch their defense from last year, but I also need to study up on some recent Khalil Mack footage. He's going to be ready for it. That's what the quarterback does. Did you ever do you remember watching Peyton Manning and the way that he broke down a defense? Well, he didn't just read it and go, "Oh yeah, no, no, no. If they're doing this, it means this because that's what every team does." No, it's because Peyton Manning watched film and he knew that when a certain team was lining up in a certain formation and when they were pushing the strong side blitz, oftentimes that meant one specific thing and it could be different from team to team. Some teams that means that they are bringing the overload blitz. Some teams it means that they're going to fake that overload blitz and they're dropping back into coverage. But Peyton Manning knew what it was going to be before every one of those snaps. And that's why he made audibles and kept screaming Omaha. It's just what quarterbacks do, man. Like Kyler Murray, do better. Arizona, do better. Like just everybody, do better because you guys really could take the NFC. And it could be somewhat of a surprise to a lot of people, but I see a very open NFC that I think Arizona has a realistic shot at if they can get their shit together. Get your shit together. Saying that to a division rival. You know what? Go ahead, implode. Let Seattle somehow be better. Actually, don't. Not this year. Get your shit together. Wait a year. Beer time. So before we move over to other NFL news, I want to talk a little bit about my phone. My phone totally shit the bed. Um, I was listening to music while I was in the shower, and no, the phone was not in the shower with me. I got out. I knew that it was at like 20% when I went in there. And then I opened up a Snapchat message. Told me I was at 15%. I said, ooh, all right, let's get this thing to a charger. By the time I got that thing to a charger, it was at 11. It didn't take me long to get there. It was a total of about maybe 10 feet. So I go and I put it on the charger and I left it there. I came back. I realized the phone had died, but in its death, it did get back to 52%. So I went and turned it back on. It is in what's called recovery mode. Me on Google, trying to figure out what the hell this is and how to fix it. Absolutely happened. So I'm trying to figure this thing out because I don't know technology pretty much at all. Like, I don't know how to edit this video, this audio. I don't know how to do any of it. That's why I do this all in one take. That's why I do the beer breaks during the show. That's why I don't edit it out because I don't know how to do any of that stuff. So I just sit here and I talk to you guys for however long I'm going to talk to you. And then Zach takes the whole footage, he clips it whatever way he feels appropriate. So right now, what I'm rocking is Michelle's old phone. And this thing is just the perfect shade of pale pink. It's just like this perfect mid-30s female phone. It's exactly what this thing looks like. Hell yeah, I'm rocking it. Thing looks awesome. I pull it out of my pocket. I say, yeah, that's my phone right now. But in the meantime, I have to get a new phone. So that's another fun project here. But yeah, me trying to figure out how to do everything, and I'm sitting here on my Chromebook trying to pull up Glide so I can talk with the guys on our little video chat. I'm like, guys, I'm still alive. Just my phone's not. Yeah. Eh, so much dumb shit that happens in life. Like, I just want one of these things to just not ever break. That's why I miss flip phones, man. Like, I had to do something to my flip phone to mess it up. Either like I would jump into the water and forget that I had it in my pocket. That's actually pretty much the only reason that I've ever messed up a phone is going into water with my phone, whether intentional or not. There's been times when I've just brought it out on like a kayak and I've totally flipped. Yeah, happens. So we're gonna move back to NFL news here. Deshaun Watson gets 6 games. And, what I was going to tell everybody is before you overreact, just keep in mind that the NFL can't appeal this still because that was from the third party arbitrator. And if you want to hear the best breakdown of the NFL system with this, I don't know if Zach has said it on breaking down the tape, but if he hasn't, I'm sure he's going to. Zach gives probably the best explanation as to his opinion on the NFL. And I don't want to tell you guys what his take is because it's his take. Check him out because he gives the best explanation that I have heard anywhere as far as what the NFL, from what their standpoint of what they should do, what that is. I know I made that a little bit confusing the way I said that, but just check out Zach. He's got a good take on that. As Braden from No Bull Sports has just informed me, the NFL has made this appeal. So, for anybody that's out there that's really pissed about the 6 games, I understand. Just keep in mind the NFL is appealing. They are pushing to make this a larger suspension than 6 games. That's all I'm going to do with Deshaun Watson here. We're obviously going to keep an ear out. Other news, Chiefs left tackle Orlando Brown Jr. reports to camp. This makes me happy. This makes me Elmo on the toilet meme. I am psyched because what I don't want, especially with the leaving of Tyreek Hill, is I do not want to see this Kansas City Chiefs offense look any less than it has in the past. And I'm sure there is already going to be a step down from missing Tyreek Hill. I just can't imagine that automatically gets replaced. But I do not want that offense to look any less electric than it has the last since Mahomes took over. Let's put it that way, because since Mahomes has taken over that team, it has been the most fun team to watch in the NFL. And whether you're a lover or a hater of it, I don't care. Just please appreciate when things are good. Like, to everybody that hates on Tom Brady, can you just sit back and appreciate like you're watching this greatness take place? Everybody that hates LeBron, fine, cool. But can you appreciate what you're watching before you just go and put them on blast? Like, this Chiefs offense has been the funnest thing in the NFL for the last 5 years. Why would anybody want that to disappear? I understand division rivals don't want to see it all the time. Okay, fine. It's, you know what? Exception granted. Broncos fans, Raiders fans, Chargers fans, you can hate the Chiefs as much as you want. Fans of any other team in the NFL, you should be happy because you get something really exciting every Sunday. And frankly, even if the Chiefs were in my division, I would still be rooting this on because it's fun as hell. I remember once upon a time when Kurt Warner was the quarterback for the Cardinals, I was still rooting that on. That didn't bother me any. You kidding me? Kurt Warner throwing to Larry Fitzgerald and Anquan Bolden? That was a blast. I would take that any day. You got to root for things when they're exciting. You don't always get them. We're going to talk about that in a little bit here. Because this week, what I am bringing to you, and well, I realized how many weeks are left, so I had originally made 2 lists of things to go over. However, I realized with this show included, I believe I'm doing 6 shows between now and the start of the NFL season. So rather than sit here and do this, where this is now going to be like an hour and 20-minute show, I'm just going to do one of these lists. Keep it to my traditional 40, 50 minutes. We're going to do top 10 quarterbacks of all time. All time. Not the top 15 we did last week of the top 15 quarterbacks going into this season. We're doing an all-time list. Oh, yes. And it feels so good. And I can also tell you that next week we will be doing the top 10 NFL teams of all time. I'm more excited about that one because I think that this one is so subjective. I was doing this, like, I will admit this, full-blown admission. Number 10, I couldn't decide what the hell to do. I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I feel confident in my top 9, and I'm just playing with different names till I found the guy that just seemed like it fit best at number 10. And another thing that shocked me about doing this list, I thought I was going to have more old-timey guys on here. And it turns out that I really don't. Actually, as I'm looking over the list, number 10 is going to be the oldest guy on the list. That was surprising to me. Frankly, I'm going to tell you some OLIs here just to give you somewhat of a heads up of some of the names I was contemplating putting in here. But first, I'm going to drink this beer. And we're going to crack the next one because you never know when you get thirsty. So, OLI, some of the names I was playing with, I had Troy Aikman, Fran Tarkenton, Roger Staubach, and Jim Kelly. Those were the guys where I'm looking at it and I'm saying, I feel like they are right about there. But who I ended up going with, number 10, Dan Fouts. Dan Fouts threw for a little over 43,000 yards, 254 touchdowns, 242 interceptions, 58.8% completion percentage, 80.2 quarterback rating, no championships, actually never even made it to a Super Bowl. Now, might not sound like the most impressive resume. Keep in mind, interception rates, TD, INT rates were way different back then, which also massively influences that quarterback rating. Completion percentage, definitely on the lower end of this list. I believe he falls in 9th on this list as far as completion percentage. But Dan Fouts, if you don't remember, well, most of you aren't going to remember. I don't remember seeing it live myself. But if you were to be a footage person like I am, who loves to go back and watch NFL films and watch like a 1971 Chargers game, you will find what is the closest resembling thing to an offensive today back in the 70s. The unfortunate part for the Chargers is that they played in an era where you still had the Staubach Cowboys, you had the Terry Bradshaw with the Steel Curtain Steelers, you had the Purple People Eater Vikings out there, you had the Bart Starr Packers, you had the Len Dawson Chiefs, you had the John Madden Run Raiders, you had oh God, I feel like I'm missing somebody here. I feel like I'm missing a big one. Point of it being, the early and mid 70s were pretty well loaded with talent as far as like overall teams were built. But Dan Fouts and the San Diego Chargers were one of the, not one of, they were the most explosive offense that the NFL had and had seen to that point, as far as I'm concerned. Because even though you can talk about teams from prior to that, like I know the Norm Van Brocklin was a great quarterback and threw all these touchdowns. Oh my God. Oh my God. And yes, it was unprecedented at that point, but what Dan Fouts was doing was even better. And frankly, I can't think of anybody else that was really running an offense that way. And if you look at a certain stretch in Dan Fouts' career, his numbers are super intensified. Like all of this average for career was way above that average for about maybe a 5-year span, give or take. And we talk about some of the best quarterback to tight end combinations of all time because recently Gronk retired. So people were like, oh, Brady to Gronk, where's it rank all time? Well, one of the pairings that you probably saw on most of these lists was Dan Fouts to Kellen Winslow. It was that good. I mean, for anybody that's watched the footage, you can just see it. It's like, all right, there's Dan Fouts dropping back, and there's Winslow. It was phenomenal the way they connected. It was one of those that I think most people that are in their 20s today will not understand. And oftentimes, even people my age in your early 30s, you're probably also not going to understand unless you're somebody like me that loves to go back and watch old timey film. The Chargers of that era were a blast to watch. Go look it up. Number 9, Brett Favre, 71,838 yards, 508 touchdowns, 336 interceptions, 62% on the dot completion percentage, 86.0 quarterback rating, one-time champion 1996. So Brett Favre has the most interceptions of any quarterback of all time. He also at one point had the most touchdowns of any quarterback of all time, and there's a reason for that. Brett Favre, as it is always said verbally, is a gunslinger. Yes, it's very true. Brett Favre stepped back in the pocket and said, "You know what? I like here," and launched it. It was fun. It was a blast. And frankly, when you look at the numbers, I mean, as far as yardage goes, he is number 4 on this list. Guy was dominant for a very long time. Yeah, he made a lot of mistakes. You know who else did? Andrew Luck. I don't think anybody would say that Andrew Luck was a bad quarterback. He threw a pretty good amount of interceptions. It's just sometimes you got to let loose. You got to throw the ball downfield, see what happens. That's, my one biggest knock on Aaron Rodgers his whole career is oftentimes he's hesitant to throw the deep ball because, well, actually, you know what? We're going to talk about that. I'll give you a heads up. He's somewhere on this list. But Brett Favre didn't care that way. And when you look at that 1996 Packers team, whew, they were good. They were real good. They had a lot of names. I mean, you think of guys like Antonio Freeman. I think that was before Dorsey Levens was there, running back wise. And they had defensive staple Leroy Butler. That was one of those safeties that you did not want to see over the middle. So Brett Favre sits at number 9. Obviously, his time with the Jets was a little bit disappointing after a really hot start that year. His time in Minnesota, he looked really good. Like you kind of thought after the Jets that Brett Favre was on his way out, like done. He went to Minnesota and it looked like he was a top 5 quarterback again. And honestly, I think I'd say he was. Brett Favre, man of many primes. Also, not always the best off the field, but we're going to leave that out of here because we're talking about on the field stuff. Number 8, John Elway. 51,475 yards, 300 touchdowns, 226 interceptions, 56.9% completion percentage, 79.9 rating, and two-time champion 97 and 98. So John Elway is the lowest quarterback rating on this list and lowest completion percentage on this list. Most of you know, even those of you who never got to see John Elway play, most of you know if there's a quarterback list that's being compiled, John Elway's on that list. There's a reason for that. Yes, you can look at this analytically and say, well, his completion percentage is definitely below par. Well, keep in mind back then, it was pretty average completion percentage. Like that was not bad. That's not like if you throw 56.9% today. Today, that makes you at best a backup. Then, everybody was throwing that. You might have been upper echelon. 300 touchdowns. Not a lot of guys have gotten there. Yeah. TD-INT ratio, not great. John Elway took chances. John Elway could throw a vortex football 110 yards. I don't know if you knew that. Anybody that's had a Nerf vortex football, John Elway, it was advertised to me as a child, threw that thing 110 yards. I believe it. I don't care. You could tell me 1,000 reasons why that's impossible. No, John Elway did that. All right. So John Elway comes in here at number 8. You'll remember, obviously, a couple famous pieces of John Elway. He obviously had the drive in the late 80s against the Cleveland Browns in the AFC Championship game. The drive, for those of you who are uninitiated, started, I believe, at their own, it was either their own one or their own two. And he methodically drove his team down the field. I believe the drive started with about 5 minutes left in the game. And he made his way the whole way down the field and got the game winning touchdown with less than a minute left. And they went on to get totally wiped out in the Super Bowl, I believe at that time by a one of those Montana monster teams. But John Elway was phenomenal. Wins his two championships the last 2 years of his career, 97 and 98, against the aforementioned Brett Favre. And, I guess Chris Chandler and the Atlanta Falcons was probably not the greatest send-off. You know, Brett Favre would have definitely been a more promising one. And that season, keep in mind that you had that Minnesota Vikings team that should have been playing them in the Super Bowl with Randall Cunningham, Randy Moss in his rookie year, Chris Carter, Robert Smith. That was the team that we wanted to see in the Super Bowl. That team might have beat John Elway that year. But as fortune has it, he got Chris Chandler and the Atlanta Falcons. And by halftime, that game was over. I remember watching that Super Bowl. It was right around my 8th birthday. I watched that Super Bowl and I was pissed because even though I wanted Elway to win, I didn't want it to be that kind of game. I love a close Super Bowl when it's not my team. We're going to drink some beer. Number 7, Steve Young. 33,124 yards, 232 touchdowns to 107 interceptions, 64.3% completion percentage, 96.8 quarterback rating, 3-time champion. Granted, one of those Joe Montana played the majority of the season. I do believe Steve Young actually was there for the postseason run. I could be wrong. I don't remember exactly how that season played out. I want to say that was maybe like the 89 or 90 season, somewhere in there. I guess it wouldn't be 90 because that was when the Bills lost to the whole NFC East. But I think that Steve Young is the most underrated quarterback in the history of the NFL. You know, he didn't play as much as a lot of your top tier quarterbacks that a lot of people would have on these lists because he was in the shadow of Joe Montana for a long time. You know, somewhat of the Aaron Rodgers effect, but if I'm not mistaken, it was even a little bit longer. Because granted, Steve Young was drafted by Tampa, but that was back when they were creamsicles and they were terrible. So Steve Young makes his way over to San Francisco, backs up Joe Montana for what had to have been an eternity. And then eventually, Joe Montana gets hurt. Steve Young comes out for a game and throws 6 touchdowns. They're like, oh, we got a thing. So that only took so much time after that point before Steve Young ended up being the quarterback in San Francisco. I mean, he obviously had the benefit of having Jerry Rice, which is the best receiver in NFL history, at least by statistics. I could make an argument for Randy Moss, but I'm not going to right now. Steve Young also had somewhat of the benefit of having Ricky Watters as a running back. He was a pretty good running back. I don't know if you guys remember Ricky Watters, but that guy could run the ball. Early in his career, Ronnie Lott was there. I think by the time he was starting, Ronnie Lott had since left. But San Francisco didn't have a terrible defense throughout any of that time period. But Steve Young always willed the team to win. And beyond that, was probably the most efficient quarterback of that entire era. I think if you really look and break down efficient statistics throughout the course of Steve Young's time as a starter in the NFL, he would be top of the league across the board. Maybe not the highest completion percentage, although I think he'd be up there. I mean, we're talking about 64.3% for his career in an era where that wasn't what everybody was doing. That had to be up there. I can tell you that quarterback rating, even on this list, is one of the highest. And I've got a lot of guys that have played in today's era still above him. Number 6, Dan Marino. 61,361 yards, 420 touchdowns to 252 interceptions, 59.4% completion percentage, 86.4 quarterback rating. Obviously, very well known, no championships. So Dan Marino, I have said this in the past, and I will always continue to say it. Dan Marino throws one of the prettiest footballs that I've ever seen in my life. There are three guys that I think throw it better than anybody else. It is Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and Dan Marino. Dan Marino is absolutely meant to be on this list. He was the all-time yardage and touchdown leader for all of eternity from the time that he retired until Brett Favre broke it, which I realize that eternity is honestly like 10 years. But keep in mind that if it wasn't for the shift of how football became this pass rating offense, that's what the league is now. So there's guys breaking this like Matt Ryan and Matt Stafford like might end up with more than that. I feel like Phillip Rivers is right about it, Dan Marino. Dan Marino was doing that before anybody else was. Dan Marino was the originator of, yeah, we're just going to keep throwing it. It's going to keep working. I hate that he never won a Super Bowl because so many people knock him down for that. And honestly, even to an extent, maybe myself, because I'd probably have him higher on this list if he had ever won one. But this is where this list got a little bit murky for me. Everywhere between really 2 and 6, I was like, I feel like I could really flip flop these guys. And if anybody else does, I don't think that I would argue with you. I think that I could have a little bit of a discourse with you, but I don't think that I would legitimately sit here and tell you that you're flat out wrong. I think a lot of these guys, it really just depends on what are the things that are important to you. And to me, it was just that Dan Marino was always going to be that electric star that was going to be able to do things that nobody else could do with a football. Number 5, speaking of, Aaron Rodgers. 55,360 yards, 449 touchdowns to 93 interceptions, by far the least on this list. 65.3% completion percentage, 104 quarterback rating. One-time champion. Aaron Rodgers, and let me correct that, that's 104.5 for quarterback rating. He has the highest quarterback rating in NFL history. For those of you who don't know, by the way, Russell Wilson is number 2. And, or at least as of a couple years ago. I don't know if maybe one of these kids is already breaking that, but we'll see how that goes because that can vary over time. Aaron Rodgers comes in oddly as one of the lower end as far as total yardage goes, which you wouldn't necessarily expect, but that is somewhat of the flaw of Aaron Rodgers. He did sit behind Brett Favre for quite some time. And when you look at that touchdown to interception ratio, it looks phenomenal. But where I was saying earlier, where Brett Favre puts the ball downfield, and that's not always a bad thing, Aaron Rodgers has tried to preserve that TD to INT ratio so much and that quarterback rating so much. He neglects taking chances at times when a quarterback should take chances just to not mess up his own efficiency stats. I hate that. I hate that. Outside of that, this guy doesn't have a lot of flaws. Yes, he can get a little bit pouty. I don't really care about that because Aaron Rodgers, when he plays, and he plays like he doesn't sit out, he's not that guy. Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks that has ever played this game. The way that the ball comes off of his finger. I remember week 1, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3. It was when Khalil Mack was having his first game as a Chicago Bear. Whenever that was. Week 1 that year was Bears-Packers, and the Bears had dominated all game. And then the Packers start making a comeback, and it's all built on Aaron Rodgers just making throws. And then the throw that, I think it was the one that tied the game. I don't think it was the one that ended up giving them the win. But the one that tied the game, he had been getting hit all night. Khalil Mack was having like a career night, his first night in Chicago. Aaron takes this ball. He gives one look and says, nope, I see that guy's about to come off the edge. And that thing in stride, like solid. It was like a half field throw. I think the snap came at half field. He was a little bit behind the logo and just zipped it right up to like the goal line. Receiver comes down with it in stride, touchdown. And it wasn't one of those where it was an open thing. Like he had to really bring the ball in there. There was a defender right on him. It was like the most perfect throw. It was so beautiful. Aaron's got that ability. I just wish he would utilize it more. He has such great arm talent. And he just likes to preserve the efficiency stats because he can always sit on that because obviously he's never going to be better than Brady by wins. So if he can be more efficient than everybody, well, that should say something. Honestly, it's probably the reason he's a number 5 for me and not higher. We're going to talk about that here coming up. Number 4, Drew Brees. 80,358 yards, 571 touchdowns, 243 interceptions, 67.7% completion percentage, 98.7 quarterback rating, one-time champion. Drew Brees, I would say there was a real time in New Orleans when they had Darren Sproles there, Marquez Colston. I'm trying to think of some of the other receivers they had. It's blanking on me right now. I know Robert Meacham was in there. They had a speedy guy too, and I can't remember who it was. It's not Ted Ginn. I know he was there at a point, but that's not who I'm thinking of. They kind of had a cluster of guys, and Marquez Colston was very good, although was definitely a possession style receiver. But their offense was predicated on we're going to not necessarily always cannon the ball deep, but we're going to utilize the speed that we have and the schemes and the fact that Drew Brees is probably, in my eyes anyway, the most accurate quarterback I've ever seen throw a football. He can do that YouTube shit where people are throwing footballs and they're like landing in certain spots. Like you can put a trash can up on a telephone pole that, 800 miles away and somebody can just throw it and it just lands right in the trash can, doesn't even knock it off the telephone pole. Drew Brees can do all that stuff. Like he's crazy good. And he showcased that during that specific time that comes to my mind in New Orleans. I think that was the most efficient offense of probably that era, outside of one New England Patriots season. But New Orleans just had this ability of being able to utilize all their positions. And when I say that, I mean positions by group. Their running backs, they would have a Mark Ingram who could run the ball. And then they had Darren Sproles, who when he was in there, most of the time he was running a route somewhere and you couldn't lose track of him. He wasn't big, but Darren Sproles was fast as hell and he could make a lot of people miss. So if you had Darren Sproles just running just even like a general, like from the shotgun, if you have him running like an in route and then crossing over, well, if the defense loses him at any point, that's an easy 15 yards. And it's not even via the catch. Like you're probably only throwing the ball 6 yards, but Darren Sproles is so quick and so fast. He's going to be, he's got room and you're not going to beat him to a spot. So Drew Brees was able to do things in that way that I think did boost his stats a little bit. And because of that, I think that I had viewed him a little bit lesser than this range for a long time. But as I continued to watch throughout the later parts of his career and the talent around him, although it was still good, it wasn't what it was when he was in his prime, and he was still making it work to not only an efficient effort, but a top tier electric offense talent. That's when I started saying, oh no, this guy, he's not just special. This is top notch all time kind of stuff here. Yeah, Brandon Cooks, he looked pretty good in New Orleans, didn't he? So he looked really that good anywhere else? I don't think so. You look at a lot of these guys that he was thrown to, and they all looked pretty successful in New Orleans, and then they would go elsewhere and don't really hear their names again. Drew Brees really had a talent. And it was really cool when he got that nice crutch of Jimmy Graham. Like, and at first too, because you could utilize him as another example of somebody that didn't do shit anywhere else, but he did at least have like a 10 touchdown season in Seattle. He had a pretty good year one time in Green Bay, but it wasn't what he did in New Orleans. Drew Brees knew how to utilize his guys, and even as recent as Michael Thomas. You remember when he broke the record for catches in a season? Yeah, Drew lost his arm. He couldn't put it downfield anymore. But you know what he could do? He could find Michael Thomas 9 yards downfield every time. And all he had to do was put it in the perfect spot. And guess what? He does better than anybody else. Put it in the perfect spot. Michael Thomas has great hands. That's how that worked. Whatever happened to Michael Thomas, by the way, while I'm on the subject, what the hell happened? What the hell? Number 3, Peyton Manning. 71,940 yards, 534 touchdowns, 251 interceptions, 65.3% completion percentage, 96.5 quarterback rating, two-time champion, although one of those should be scrubbed from the record books because that was terrible. Peyton Manning, outside of that last season, his career was phenomenal. Like, I know you can look at his early career and you can say, wow, look at all those interceptions. Look, the Colts were bad. They were really bad. That's why they had Peyton Manning in the first place. They were a bad team and they got Peyton Manning. Well, as they got better, you pick up a Marvin Harrison, Nedrin James, a Reggie Wayne. They had Marcus Pollard and early incarnations of this. And then you get guys like Brandon Stokely and Dallas Clark. The Colts were the funnest offense in the league for a long time. It was them and the Chiefs. I don't know if you guys remember those Chiefs teams with Trent Green, Eddie Kenninson, and Tony Gonzalez. Those were phenomenal too. But that Colts team in general, that offense was unstoppable. And we saw, obviously, Peyton Manning at the time break the record for touchdowns in a season. I believe at the time he had set it at 48, 49, somewhere in there. He'd broken Dan Marino's record. Because again, Dan Marino had all these records before these new guys came for their stuff. So Peyton Manning, obviously known as a serious diagnoser of what a defense is presenting you, what the defense is going to do, and being an audible messiah. I can't remember a play that he didn't audible, and it was to such an extent that even if you played a Madden video game, Peyton Manning would be calling audibles. It sucked playing against the Colts because you would set up your defense and then he would audible, and then you would audible your defense, and you kept having to play this chess match with him before he snapped the ball. The big key in Madden, anyway, you couldn't do this in real football, but in Madden, what you could do is you could just wait till he's made a set with about 9 seconds left on the play clock, and then you wait like 3 seconds, and then you make your last shift. Because now he doesn't have time to reshift, and now he's stuck throwing against whatever defense you just set him. That was the only way that you could defend Peyton Manning from getting something open on you every time you played Madden. So Peyton Manning's ability, he's one of these guys, and I think I could say this about the majority of the guys on this list, honestly, outside of guys like Aaron Rodgers, Dan Marino, and John Elway. I don't know that any of these other guys are really the most talented arms. Granted, Peyton might be next on that list after those guys. Accuracy wise, yeah, he was accurate. He wasn't Drew Brees. Arm strength, it was a strong arm. Wasn't Aaron Rodgers. Decision making, yeah, it's good. Also, what they also could make the same thing. Wasn't Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees. I'd say Tom Brady, but Tom Brady actually, well, we'll get to Tom Brady. Peyton Manning didn't necessarily have the I am the best at anything aspect outside of his ability to audible into a situation where he was going to be able to make a play happen that was going to be the correct one for the team. That was the thing that Peyton Manning did that nobody else could do. But beyond that, Peyton Manning, granted, had great talent there. I mean, we're talking about two Hall of Famers in Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne. Granted, I don't know if they are in the Hall of Fame, but they should be if they're not. Those are very, very good wideouts. Peyton Manning still utilized that to the best of his ability. And the only unfortunate thing is that they weren't able to win just one more title when Peyton Manning was still in that prime there. Because again, I know he got to win the second one in Denver, but he had 9 touchdowns, 17 interceptions that season. That was the ghost of Peyton Manning out there. That was so disappointing to watch. So Peyton Manning sits at number 3, and I honestly never thought that I would have him there. because I myself was never a huge Peyton Manning fan. I was always a Brady guy, and there was a lot of talk for a very long time, believe it or not, Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, who's better. And you'll hear most defenders today that said that they played against both of them. They say it was a lot harder to prep for Peyton Manning than it was for Tom Brady. That's fine, but Tom Brady was going to win. Peyton Manning got to the playoffs. I mean, God forbid Ty Law is on the other side of that field because he will just throw it to Ty Law all game. There was one game he threw 3 interceptions all to Ty Law, opening round of the playoffs. Peyton Manning was not a good postseason quarterback. That's really the biggest knock on Peyton Manning. And that was why I didn't really ever think I'd have him this high on the list. But when I look back at what he did throughout the course of his career, and what I remember, and I remember watching all this, like it was phenomenal. He deserves to be number 3. Number 2, Joe Montana. Now, in today's day and age, this could be actually somewhat controversial. I'm going to read off the stats and then we'll talk about this. 40,551 yards, 273 touchdowns, 139 interceptions, 63.2% completion percentage, 92.3 quarterback rating, 4-time champion. So the reason that he was always titled as the top quarterback of all time before Tom Brady was because he had the 4 championships. And that to a lot of people meant a lot. Granted, yes, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Terry Bradshaw also has 4, but Joe Montana looked a hell of a lot better than Terry Bradshaw doing it. And Joe Montana was really somebody that was kind of the opening of efficiency in the NFL. For the most part, you didn't see a lot of efficient quarterbacks back in his time in the 80s into the 90s. You saw guys that were trying to make big plays, get a lot of yards, get a lot of touchdowns. It was a whole bunch of Brett Favres out there, like that weren't Brett Favre talent. That's what a lot of the quarterback rooms were like. And with the 49ers, they had Bill Walsh, who began the West Coast offense, and Joe Montana was the first person to be able to capitalize off that. Now, in some of Joe Montana's best years, keep in mind, it's before Jerry Rice was even a part of the team. He was throwing to Dwight Clark. Yeah. You remember the Immaculate Reception? It wasn't that one. That was Franco Harris. I messed that up. I meant the catch. that was Dwight Clark. So the Niners really developed a different style system. And Joe Montana, before Jerry Rice, during Jerry Rice, and after he left the Kansas City, where he wasn't with Jerry Rice, was still able to have success all across the board. Now, the 4 championships, obviously, this has something to do with it. And you can talk about, oh, he had Roger Craig as a running back. Hey, Jerry Rice at one point. And, oh, well, Dwight Clark. I mean, look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Dwight Clark was a bad receiver, but the guy wasn't coming down with 100 catches anytime soon. I'll throw that out there right now. But the style of offense that Joe Montana was meant to play was meant for Joe Montana because it wasn't, hey, we're going to throw that deep post route here. I don't care what the defense is doing. Throw it. It was, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a deep post route, and then underneath that, we're going to have a crossing pattern. I want you to be looking at that deep post route, but if the guy underneath is open and the guy at the top is not, I want you to hit the guy that's short. You know what? We might set up plays where we have one guy running a deep in route 10 yards downfield. We got one guy running into the flats. We got a crossing pattern coming through where essentially nobody was running a deep route. It was 4 guys all running short patterns. Really kind of throws off a defense when you're not used to it. And yeah, to an extent, he was able to take the league by storm because he had a great coaching staff that developed a system that defenses had not seen and were confused by. Joe Montana still perfected this system. This system does not work without Joe Montana, the same way that Phil Jackson invented the triangle, and this is how we play basketball, and Zen Master. Well, you know what? The triangle probably doesn't work that great if you don't have Michael Jordan and then Kobe Bryant after that. Works a lot better with those guys. So, to whatever extent you want to give credit to Bill Walsh here, keep in mind that Joe Montana was awesome. Now, I do realize that outside of Steve Young, he is the most or the least amount of yards on this list. Hey, part of that's the era, part of that's the offense that was being run. But Joe Montana really changed the game as far as the quarterback position is concerned from an efficiency standpoint, which honestly kind of birthed what we see today because we see efficiency over gunslinging, right? For the most part, it's just that the NFL's totally a pass first, pass second, pass third offense now. That's the reason these quarterbacks are having all these massive numbers. Plus, now defensive backs can't do anything to a wide receiver. So your receivers are running a lot more freely than they used to. And the quarterbacks themselves can't be touched. So at this point, quarterbacks have all the freedoms in the world. That's why you see all these ridiculous numbers today. Joe Montana did it at a time when none of those rules were in place. Number one, you guys know who it is. It's Tom Brady, 84,520 yards, 624 touchdowns, 203 interceptions, 64.2% completion percentage, 97.6 quarterback rating, 7 championships. I mean, guys, let me break down Tom Brady a little bit of a story element here. Tom Brady came into the league because Drew Bledsoe got hurt. And Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick out of Michigan. Honestly, was in worse shape than he is now at 45. Tom Brady steps onto the field, and although it's not explosive like Drew Bledsoe, it's efficient, and for some reason in the fourth quarter, it's perfect. It was strange the way that it first came together, and this is why I really found myself just totally enamored with Tom Brady. Because what he did, I mean, his ball wasn't as pretty as damn near anybody else. His accuracy was good. It wasn't great. Decision making, honestly, he throws pick sixes. like a lot of people like to say like, "Oh no, Tom Brady, he doesn't make mistakes." Well, yeah, he does. Like, yeah, he doesn't throw a lot of interceptions, but he can throw some really bad ones. I've seen Tom throw passes where I'm like, I don't know where you thought that was going to happen. Anything other than what just happened. Like he makes bad decisions sometimes. But when it's the fourth quarter, no, he just wins. It's crazy. Like I know I can obviously allude to the Atlanta Super Bowl where they were down 28-6 and they come back and win the game. But I felt like the whole beginning of his career was that. It was just, okay, the Pats are down. Well, what are they going to do now? Well, Brady's just going to keep chipping at it, and you're going to win. I don't know what to tell you. The Pats are going to win. You would just see that there was time left on the clock. Oh yeah, the Pats are going to win, and that still goes today. I remember 2018, best team in the league that year was the Kansas City Chiefs, and it wasn't even close. They play the Pats in the AFC Championship game, and Mahomes scores the ball, and you look at the clock, and you're like, no, there's time. That's a problem. Brady's about to go down and get you a field goal, and the Pats are going to go to the Super Bowl. And guess what happened? Pats end up in the Super Bowl. So what I would say in terms of Tom Brady is that the progression that we saw, we've always seen that winning aspect. There was a period of time after the original Deion Branch, Troy Brown, David Patton phase from his early receiving core. He had guys like Doug Gabriel. You know why you don't know that name? Because he was good in New England and then he went to Oakland and you never heard about him ever again. I think he left the league after Oakland. I think Oakland actually scared the NFL out of him. Tom Brady has taken whatever receivers are put in front of him and made it work. And then he had that one magical year where he got Randy Moss, Dante Stallworth, and Wes Welker. And it was like, holy shit, I can have so much fun. You know what he did? Broke the record for touchdowns in a season that particular year at 50. Yes, it was broken again later on. Peyton Manning had to come take his record back like an asshole. But Brady got to play around. And then after that, you get the tight end combination of Gronk and Aaron Hernandez. Obviously, one of those really did not pan out long term. One of those did. all the way till last year. Tom Brady's had it his whole career. And no matter what you've put around him, the Pats are not a bad team. You know what the worst Tom Brady year was? The year after that first Super Bowl, 2002. They went 7-9. Or maybe it was 9-7 and they just missed the playoffs. I don't remember. That was the worst year that the Pats had. Outside of that, I think the only time they missed the playoffs was when he went down in 08, and they were still, I think they were 11-5 and missed the playoffs that year with Matt Castle as their quarterback. The AFC was just loaded that year, kind of like this year. Tom Brady, through everything, has just been not only the greatest quarterback of all time, I can make the argument the greatest player of sport all time. It's legitimately an argument that I could make. Do I think it's the case? I could argue a few people here. Serena absolutely would like a word. LeBron would like a word. MJ would like a word. Basketball's got a weird thing there. I think there might be, like, there's the closest thing to a double GOAT scenario that I have ever seen. Man, Tom Brady. All right, guys. So next week, we're going to talk about the top 10 NFL teams of all time. When I say that, I'm not just going to say, oh, the Steelers. No, it's going to be a specific year of the Steelers. I guess, spoiler alert, there is a Steelers on here. I actually just looked down to see. I did all this research thinking I was going to have to do both of these today, which now I'm really happy that I didn't, considering I'm at about an hour and 12 minutes. This would have been going on for a whole nother hour. But we're going to break this one down next week. Top 10 teams of all time. I already did the majority of my research on this, or actually all of it, because I thought I was bringing it today. We're going to do it next week. And I think I've got what we're going to do for the last 3 weeks leading up to the season as well. I think I got this planned. I know that we're going to do the week before the week leading into the NFL season. You're going to get the top 10 power rankings, and you're going to get a little bit of pick advice. The week before that, we're going to go through what my predictions for all the teams in the NFL are going to be. I might not even do news in that show. There might be no opinion giving. It might just be straight to something that I've created. The week before that, I know I had something there, but I don't recall exactly what it was. But I got something, and I know that it's going to register in my mind here eventually. So we have plans now throughout now till the beginning of the NFL season. I am so happy to be able to do this. This is a blast for me. Check out Jacked and Canned for those of you that want to hear me have fun and not just talk by myself, but with somebody else. Check me out on Jacked and Canned with my buddy John. We have a great time over there. Check out Breaking Down the Tape in general, because we have a lot of fun people here. We got everything from Breaking Down the Tape. We got No Bull Sports. We got Raw Smack. We got all sorts of fun stuff over here. And oh, just wait till college football season. I cannot wait for you guys to get a load of Jimmy Pibbs. So guys, check us all out. As always, this has been Nobody Is Shiftier.